Hey, party people. Welcome to the Dental Efficiency Playbook. My name's Gabe Hofmann, also known as the Dental Efficiency Guy, and I have a treat for you tonight. We are diving into what very well may be the most untouched blue ocean aspect of group practice and DSOs today. And Dr. Eric Roman is joining me to dive into the conversation of connecting the associate doctors, our producers, our providers, to the company that is the organization and eliminating the obstacles. Eric, hey, how are you? Welcome to the Dental Efficiency Playbook podcast, and I am so glad to have you join me tonight to tackle this. Tell me,
Gabe, love being here with you.
Yeah. You are quite possibly the number one expert when it comes to this in group practice. You've been doing this for a long time, right? And you know all the operations. You're connected in every aspect of dentistry. You are the visionary in so what are you seeing when it comes to the obstacles that get in the way of again optimal performance as well as productive, happy doctors and the organizational targets, goals, and results?
Yeah. Gabe, like anybody that has been in dentistry, in the group dentistry space for any period of time, like everybody knows how big the problems are, right? The first thing that I will acknowledge is that I don't even think that we're quantifying well how much damage the rampant turnover and dissatisfaction of associate dentists, how much of a dent it's putting into our profitability, into the health of the business. But that's just like the tip of the iceberg. That's what we see and we want to talk about. Like, oh yeah, if I could fix this, it'd be more profitable. Forget that. This is the reputation of the dental industry. See, like the majority of the patients in the United States right now that had dentistry done on them today in the US, the majority of them saw an associate. I want you to think about that. They saw an employed dentist. And so the failure of associate dentistry to thrive, the failure of the employed dentist model is the degradation of the health of the dental industry. A lot of people have talked about how the reputation of dentists is going down in the pervasive population, how dental franchise groups or whatever you want to call it, how DSOs, like how patients are learning to avoid them. Well, guess why? It's because this relationship isn't working and it's doing damage. But then there's more. This is probably the number one reason that we have the team turnover that we have. As we've increased the number of employed dentists, the associates, as we've failed to deliver for them a pathway to success and health, which they've proven to us through the fact that they're changing jobs every 14 to 16 months. That means it's not working, really obvious, right? They aren't getting what they want. Their failure becomes the failure of the team. And so now we have team turnover. We lose hygienists. So like deep down inside, it's funny. Like I always joked as a CEO, everything's actually operations in a dental practice. It's all connected, right? So long story short, like, is it possible that our unwillingness or incapability to address the relationship between the associate and the company is actually the thing that might be having the greatest destructive effect on our industry and on the health of the profession at large? That's my thesis statement.
It's an amazing and a very valid point, because when you think about the health of a practice, it's the foundation, right? The people that build the business. So 2 points. Obviously, you have the doctor turnover. The teams work directly for and with the provider. So when there's that turnover, then you have patient churn because the doctor turnover, right? Lack of continuity of care. Taking that a step further, how do you create a sustainable culture when you have doctor turnover? So not only are your costs going up, patients are out the door,
Yep.
team turnover. It's very expensive, not to mention the reduction in quality care. And so that's why I truly agree and think that it may be one of, if not the most important conversation in dentistry today, because every great organization is built by its people before its profits, right? And as we know, people out the door, profit out the door. And a sustainable culture is what people come to. So I think that,
Yes.
Being an operations guy through and through, I focus first and foremost leadership and culture before adding people, adding systems. And you can't do that. Where does it always start?
Ooh.
It's the leaders in the practice. It's the provider. It's the operations manager. So another question that I have, one thing that I see consistently that I think you're very in tune with is there can be distinct barriers or fences or walls up in the ability for that to be a fruitful conversation from the standpoint of operations, front desk operations and clinical operations in a number of group practices or DSOs, where that relationship is so key, because when you're leading patients to yes from the clinic to the consultation and recall, everyone has to be on the same page, right? So can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing from the standpoint of those fences or barriers or the inability for, streamlined and aligned communication between the entire team, including the doctors?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, so Gabe, you started this conversation talking about leadership as a term, right? And, like John Maxwell, everything rises and falls on leadership, like core principle of John Maxwell. So when we're not succeeding, we have a leadership problem. Here's the catch. What was the sales proposition to the associate to join? And in truth, whether this was by design or not, a lot of what the associate sales proposition became was, you don't have to worry about anything. Just show up and do dentistry. That was the sales prop. We handle everything else. And what indirectly happened in there is that we undermined or stepped around the responsibility that was innately present always for the dentist to have to lead. I don't care who you are as a dentist. You are a leader. Like, you have a responsibility for leading right? your patients through care, leading your patients to yes, as you said it. Yeah. Leading your team to successful, and another piece, leading yourself in development and growth. And so the first point, Gabe, is that what we've really done, and I think the first and most critical failure, is that we actually decided that associateship meant I don't have to lead. Somebody else is going to lead me to success in place. And I think that I remember when I was an associate, and that was what I assumed. It's almost like I abdicated responsibility for my role and for the journey almost out of the gate. And so I think that's where it starts, is in the leadership thing. But now I'll pivot to your point about the care team, right? Leading our team, being on the same page. And what I have discovered, this is my journey. I have hired my own triple digits. I have helped other people hire, thousands of associates. I've trained more clinical directors than anybody in the industry. And what I see is two critical failures. Number one, there is no standard, zero. Nobody, and you know where it comes from. Why is there no standards? Because of autonomy. We have to give dentists clinical autonomy.
Clinical standards, correct?
Well, not just clinical, behavioral. There's no standard for what it looks like to be successful as a dentist. The truth is, Gabe, if we asked our patients what success looked like for a dentist, they wouldn't talk about anything clinical. They would talk about behavioral. I want a dentist that sees me for who I am, that communicates well with me, that gives me choices, that does like that. That's what our patients say, right? Yeah. They don't say, I need like 2-micron margins and like, other stuff. They don't say any of that. Like, in fact, our patients don't typically know the difference between good and bad dentistry. You know that, and I know that. Like, any dentist knows, that by and large, outside of aesthetic cases, patients don't know the difference. So, like, there's no standard.
How you treated them, not what you treated them with.
Right.
Right.
You got it. And in an absence of a standard, like, you assume people create their own. And that's true. Like, everybody has 1,000 standards, but none of them are really valid. So we have no standard, no best practice for how to be effective. And then the second piece is that we've been afraid. We've been so ridiculously afraid to step on this clinical autonomy thing, or this autonomy that Dr. Roman should be able to do whatever he wants because he's a dentist, and like God has imbued him with dental power. So like, we should submit to that. Well, everybody's been so afraid to do that everybody's afraid to talk to me about stuff. Call me out for clinical care that's substandard. There's no nurturing. There's no development. Dental groups are failing in their ability to develop dentists. Like, and we all know this. Like, when a dentist comes out of school, they're clueless. Like, they know what it means to be a dentist. And so we've built no pathway to develop them through a career. So those to me are leadership, an absence of standards for success, and an absence of an ability to develop the dentist. That's like my overarching failure set.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good point. Seeing doctors at all stages, and there's so many different variables when it comes to leadership, right? Just understanding how to communicate, how to give feedback, how to hold people accountable, besides clinical dentistry. And so there's that journey that when we expect them to come in, no matter what prior experience, if there's not structure around that, there's not focus, there's not the investment, are we really expecting them or giving them the tools and the resources and the training to be at their best? And I will say, right. the old adage that if you've seen one DSO, you've seen one DSO. There are so many groups today that are investing in the training and development. Whether that, again, level of comprehensive development, and I love to see the mentor partnerships, right? When an associate is put in under, you mentioned developing clinical directors, right? And so you have an associate that's learning under a mentor, and that connection. And then the what can't be forgotten is the pathways for that associate to become a clinical director or to step in their own new practice. Mm-hmm. More importantly than that pathway of, hey, I need to keep this doctor in this practice because I right? Do we want to retain the doctor, or do we keep them in there because of the productivity of that specific office, when their motivation, their aspiration, their training is, hey, I should be a clinical director now, which is another thing that I see. So,
well, and like, I'll confess to your point, nobody knows how to be a clinical director, Gabe. I've discovered that. Like, there's nobody. Do you know one thing that I've discovered too? A lot of dentists, when you ask them if they want to be mentors, they raise their hand. But I've also discovered they don't know how to be mentors.
It's a really good
they don't know how to be effective mentors, right? Like, and like, there's no mentorship training. There's no like, hey, this is how you can become a really effective mentor. Like, I've worked with big dental groups. I've worked with emerging and small ones. I've worked with solo practices. Like, this is just, these are universal truths. And I'll actually add to it, and I'll say that oftentimes, Gabe, the dentist that raises their hand and says, I want to be a clinical director, I want to be a clinical leader, I want to be a mentor, when you actually show them what that means, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh no, that's uncomfortable for me. I don't want, like, and truth, like secret truth, I'm sorry, is that that oftentimes we just, what those dentists are saying is, I've tapped out on my growth as a dentist and I need another mechanism. And I think that's what it is. There's a false belief that there's more money in being a clinical leader. In fact, the hard thing about clinical leadership is paying them. When you're an exception, when you're an outlier dentist, you have an outlier earning potential. The best dentists dentists that are making $500,000 a year as dentists because they're outliers will never make as much money as clinical leaders. It's actually one of the biggest challenges that we have. And yet often they think, oh, well, look at how much, like, I could multiply my, no, actually it's really hard for us to do that. And then maybe the last thing I'll say inside of that, like, unfortunate things that I've learned in many companies that have dedicated clinical directors and clinical leaders, or often in emerging groups, what do we have? The founding dentist CEO is the one that's fulfilling that role.
Yep.
And what do I do when I go in there and I take a look and I say, hey, this is what it looks like. And they look at the role and the job description, the responsibilities that have to get done. And they're like, hey, Eric, this is exactly what we needed, but I don't want to do it. And like, that's where we are. So it sucks, man. This is why we got a big problem, baby.
Do you know, I don't think there's a week that goes by that I don't talk to an office. And I think we're all guilty of this at some point in time, but I hear frequently that by nature, I am a people pleaser, and maybe it's of training or of my role. I'm a people pleaser and I am an avoider. And so when you're a people pleaser and you're an avoider, what do? We wait until, the proverbial fit hits the shan in order to address things, as opposed to consistently giving feedback. Again, empowered accountability, holding people accountable to what is going to give them more green lights, allow them to win on a daily basis. Right. And so that is something that I am seeing pretty consistently. So it's a really, really good point that I think, I just want to stress again that understanding that is, I guess that's why there's so many consultants, why you stay busy training associates and doctors, right? Because of that right there. Granted, in a busy practice, right? Or, that sort of in between where you've been practicing for, say, 3 to 5 years, but you're adding on services, you're growing your business. There's a lot of responsibility outside of just doing the dentistry. So many times they don't have the bandwidth or the understanding or feel like they have the time to do it. Whereas we know it's probably the most effective ROI. You spend that time in a practice building up your team members, and you're going to have the sustained results, improved patient care, and continue to grow your business for the long term. But I see that pretty consistently. And I think, where you're connecting the dots between the business and the doctor and eliminating those obstacles, you're sustaining the results for the long term, as opposed to the nature of so many practices, which is up and down month to month, and so much seasonality in the business. So, that is something that I can say firsthand, that I have those conversations on a weekly basis, and why I was really looking forward. In fact, just 2 days, last Friday, and was looking forward to speaking with you about this, because it's, the bigger that a practice gets, the bigger that a business gets, especially in the emerging groups, the more they need that structure. And more often than not, they need somebody else to come in and help them implement it and put the systems in place to make that repeatable.
I'm going to make, like you said, 4 things in there that I want to put a pin in because there was super value there with it. One, you talked about return on investment with team. And there's a reason why everybody knows how much potential exists here and what the costs are. No dental group is blind. Now, they might not maybe quantify the volume, but everybody gets it. Everybody gets that there's a problem. And there's a reason why nobody's done anything. And it's because it's this is some of the hardest and most complicated behavior change. This is the hardest and most complicated behavior change in our industry. So what DSOs have decided to do instead is to work around the periphery of the issue, to walk around the elephant and decide to focus on everything else, like rev cycle, patient engagement platforms and things like that. And even hygiene is so much easier. I have my dear friend Elliot Zeibel, like part of his go-to-market for his new product is focused on hygiene because he recognizes it's a lot more tangible and easy to make changes there than it is in the doctor side. I'm like his support there and he's like, I don't want to touch the doctors right now. It's so complicated. So that's point 1. Point 2 is you talked about the concept of pleasing. And I talk a lot about how in dentist development, I see almost all companies go through 3 distinct phases. The first phase is pure pleasing, which means they do anything and everything to get their dentists to like thinking their dentist will adore them and join them and do whatever. And they reach a point in the pleasing phase where they realize they're not serving anyone and it's destroying the company, which leads to phase 2. And phase 2 is transition, when they recognize we need to move from pleasing to serving. And phase 2 transition, if they thought that phase 1 wasn't fun, phase 2 is hell. It's hell, brother, because that's when dentists get out pitchforks and torches and say, I'm accustomed to you pleasing me. I don't like that you're now trying to serve me and do what's in the best interest. So if you don't give me what I want again, I'm leaving and you have no revenue. And so that's a really scary phase. But the companies that stick with it and are principled enough make it to the 3rd phase, which is where they're serving dentists. They're clear on who they are and how they serve best. They're clearer on the right dentists. And that's really what we help companies do, is to move from pleasing doctors through the hell to the like where they're actually serving them, the company, and the patients better. So, and then the 3rd thing that you mentioned is like this concept of consistency and like how, and the interesting thing, how much of your revenue for your group or your practice is dentists? Let's be honest. It's 70, 80% of your revenue is dentists. If you're a specialty, it might be 100%. And so what you're telling me, what sort of consistency and energy are you putting into protecting that revenue? And the answer is none. We're stepping around it and we're afraid to deal with it and we're afraid to talk about it and we're afraid to put the systems in place. We're going to focus on everything else. So in other words, you are leaving 70 to 80% of your revenue, of your company's revenue and health unprotected. And so if there's anything that our program is doing, like it's just creating the consistency. How good would it be to know that out of the 20 working days in the month, your team is spending one day, at least one day, focused on improving and protecting the 70 or 80% of your revenue. And so like that consistency, like, because the truth is, like when we ask these companies, how much time are you putting into it? And they're like, the answer is when crap blows up. Like when we have 3 dentists put in their notice in a week, we're like, oh crap, we got to put some serious energy here. And then it's like, what does that look like? And so instead we're staying ahead and we're being proactive about building great systems so that like you're in front of it, not behind it. So those are kind of like 3 things you perked up for me, big guy.
I mean, this is the dental efficiency playbook. Since when is being reactive to disaster efficient in any business? So I love that because being proactive, again, structure, putting the systems in place, especially on your highest level, your primary producer, it's the cost.
Right.
Look at group practices.
Yep.
$1 of cost is call it $10 or $12 in value. A dollar, if we're take that dollar of cost, goes straight to the EBITDA line. The EBITDA line is whatever that valuation, let's say $5 to $12 in value. So do you really have the time and the money to not invest in your doctor development? Should be the question.
Yep.
And the answer is no. You have
Remarkable question.
I mean, so again, in this, we're given insights, tips, tricks, and the occasional cheat code to level up the dental game. That's what this podcast is all about. So I think if you want to level up dentistry, top line to bottom line, you have to invest in your people, and you have to develop leaders at all levels of your organization, but especially those that are inherently the leaders that are guiding the rest of your team. So, what do you see? Is it financial? A lack of resources to do it? Is it the systems, right? The training and systems in place? What is the primary obstacle that gets in the way of that happening consistently?
Gabe, I think that there's actually like a treasure trove of obstacles. And that's why if it was 1 or 2 obstacles, we would have already fixed this a long time ago. If it was 1, 2, or 5 obstacles, we would have fixed it. And I think that we've got like probably in excess of like a dozen plus obstacles and barriers that have made this what it is. Everything from history of how things have been done, everything from the reticence of the dental industry to change, to like adapting to other things, everything from the concepts of the dentist's training, like the mindsets of the dentist, everything to the changing expectations of the patient population, right? Like our patients expect something different because of how they've been trained. It's something that everybody else is learning. Like we are not customer focused. We tell our customers what to do. What other customer focused business does that? Customer focused businesses like guide their customers into what the customer wants. Yeah. And we're like, nah, you're dumb. Do you not know what to do? If you don't like what I say, I'm going to guilt you into it. Then I'm going to beat you over the head with it every time you show up every 6 months. And I'm going to tell your kids that you suck. And that's what we do as dentists, and it's expensive. So I think there's a lot of reasons. When I summarize the solution here, like summarizing solution, I think it's 3 prongs. Like all the problems can come back to 3 solutions. I mentioned it before. 1 is a standard. There has to be a standard for what it looks like to be an extraordinary dentist in this day and age, an extraordinary member of the team. How do we lead people to yes? Like you said, I really love that terminology. The second thing that comes once there's a standard, then and only then we can measure and get data relative to the standard. Okay. I mean, and so because if we can't measure whether the standard's followed, we got no way of knowing. But the last piece is the part where the magic happens, and we have to have behavior change. If we have what we currently have in the dental industry is we have a lot of analytics. Everybody's got an analytics platform, like everybody and their mom. Yeah. Analytics provide the data. Sometimes not the right data, but it's the data. And the data without behavior change is just noise. It's just noise, it's confusion, and it's waste. And so until we move from simply providing data to providing tangible behavior change, we don't have a solution. That's what we do for 2 people. We do it for the associate dentist. We provide them with the standards. We provide them with the measurements, and then we provide them with the ability to change. The second party we do it for is the clinical leadership of a company. Nobody's ever said, these are the standards of clinical leadership. Now we're going to have data attached to it. And now we're going to have behavior change. So for all the problems, Gabe, which by the way, we could do a 9-hour podcast and just talk through all the problems and cry and sob, and we'd all give up. And, but instead we're going to say, listen, let's just set a standard. Let's be courageous about setting a standard. Let's then establish the measurement, and let's use the measurement to drive behavior change. And I act like that's easy. To me, it maybe feels easy, but it is still really hard. where technology is really going to be, where our company is investing heavily, is in the technology of behavior change. Like that's something, like we're just not telling people what to do. We're using technology to help guide them to behavior change, which like that's something that I really think is the thing that has me most excited about like all the technology that we're seeing. How can the technology make me more effective as a dentist? Oh, now we're getting hot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously time. I mean, you said it's not that easy, but what I think is not very difficult to do is to make, again, the change, if you're not doing it in your business, to allocate, like put it in your budget. Go to your accounting department and say, we have to account, not just outside, either bringing you in to do this, right? Associates and or doctors, but look at where you're bleeding, where the biggest opportunity is in your treatment plans, in your acceptance. Focus on that low hanging fruit first, develop those doctors. But the inherent nature of like team building pays dividends. It's like, getting a team together in a, what is the productivity that comes from a team going to a conference together and then coming back to your office? It's like a good 6 months, 3 to 6 months of productivity from that, right? Same thing happens when we invest in developing our people. So I don't think, personally, that is a difficult decision to make if you don't have it in your organization, because I think you can't afford not to. And it's not a matter of guilt. It's that it's vitally important. And you guys, I love can you talk me through just a little bit, both how you have shifted, like you've been building this out and continuing to build this out to be even more engaging and effective. Can you talk a little bit about that shift and what you guys have been working on?
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. It's interesting. It's funny because this wasn't where I planned to apply my energy. And it was like life sometimes like calls you to something, and then you look back and you're like, oh, that's my whole history of my like dental industry journey. And it's like life was preparing me for this for a really long time. We're in the third iteration of how we're doing this. Like we're in the third iteration in 9 months of making adjustments. Everything's working, but we're discovering some really interesting things. And what we're discovering at the core of this is like this term. I mean, listen, I've done so much time on stage talking about engagement, like the HR concept, the human resource concept of human engagement. And like, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, ask ChatGPT for the data, like the research-based data on the power of and the difference between an engaged employee and a non-engaged employee will blow your brains out. Like it will literally leave your jaw on the floor. You'll be sitting there and saying, wow. And there's also zero, the data doesn't like contradict itself. The data is like, this is the most important thing. Well, when we apply that concept of engagement to the dental associate, to the dentists, I'm going to say dentists in general, because like the truth is, like, even though my target market is multi-location, like this is really totally applicable to every dentist that's ever walked earth. And what we recognize is that the most effective dentists in history are extraordinarily engaged. Like it just is the way that it works. The catch, Gabe, is that in our modern era, dentists don't know how to engage. They don't know what engagement looks like. Like that was a critical piece. That's why we come back to standards. Like we have to almost draw a picture of what's possible for you. So as I have been training, now in the last 9 months, I had like 140 dentists that have gone through some of our training. The thing that always blows my mind is that they don't even understand what's possible or what things can look like. Very few have a clue about that. And so relative to your point, the first thing that we're doing inside of our program, it's really assessing their awareness and engagement. And it's funny because as we started doing that, like we were doing it because honestly, we started to we want to get a sense of where they are. We do, by the way, as a portion of our program, we review the doctor for you every 90 days. We put together their entire review. And depending on how engaged they are, they might build a strategy for growth, right? But like at the end of the day, when we started doing that, what was really interesting, like of course, I want every dentist engaged. But anybody that has associates knows like, engagement is so hard. They won't even reply to my text message or our emails or show up for our meetings or do like, it's so hard to get them to like integrate with what we're doing. It's free. Why won't you do it? Well, we're kind of discovering the same thing, but you know, what's been funny when all of a sudden we start quantifying the data. I'll give you an example. We had a dentist in a group, the Pacific Northwest, that like, we had literally spent 4 months trying to get this dentist to reply to an email or wouldn't answer my phone call, wouldn't reply to a text, wouldn't reply to a video, wouldn't reply to anything. Like we did everything. And when we finally got that doctor to engage, twice, we got them to like at least talk. It was, I have a lot going on inside my personal life right now, and I don't really have the capacity to be able to do this. And what was interesting is that the company was so frustrated with this doctor. And now as a third party, when we had the data to come back and say, hey, here's what's going on for your doctor, they were like, oh my gosh, this doctor has been saying that to us for months. We thought that it was, and I said, it doesn't matter whether it's a lie or whether it's the truth. The reason you're not happy and getting what you want out of this doctor is this doctor isn't in a space in their life, and they haven't been for 4 months to be able to make a contribution, a meaningful contribution, and grow. Like, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this doctor isn't a fit for what we need inside of our company. And we've been trying, long story short, engagement, Gabe.
No, like, it's so good.
Coaching in general.
Collecting information, being effective about gauging where your team members are, your employees are, and meeting them where they are and developing them. It's so good. Yep. So good. In fact, I was just looking at a client that I'm working with that today, because I'm starting to get those questionnaires back for a 12 question, anonymous, feedback survey about whether they feel, how people feel supported, how they feel development pathways, and all the opportunities for growth, support, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, called E12. And I don't know if you're familiar with that system. There's a number of different systems, but collecting data, looking at it objectively, and then understanding how we can approach a change in supporting behaviors or promoting behaviors. So that's such a great point, such a very, very great point. And it's actually a very low cost, high impact opportunity as well. And I think, the point that you made, are you guys implementing that and collecting that data for them and then walking through with them how to process that data thereafter?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the gift that we get in being a third party. It's that what happens is when it's just you and your team and your managers and your regionals and everybody else, you're the smartest people in the room, but you're asking yourself the question so often, is it us or is it them? Or is it both or is it neither? Right. And so what we're offering, what we're giving the ability is now you have this nice third party assessment to be able to look and say, hey, and we've had to have the conversation a lot of times to say, hey, there's a little bit of them, but there's actually a lot of you. I need you to know, company, that this is the interpretation of what your doctors see. And I don't need you to tell me whether it's truth or not. I need you to acknowledge this is what 4 doctors say. 4 doctors are talking about how the financial arrangement process is where their treatment plans go to die. And if you don't address this, I'm providing certainty you're losing doctors, right? So, at the end of the day, that's really what we're providing is this platform of, hey, listen, you don't have time to spend millions of dollars developing, like putting in place a dentist development platform with all the stuff that we can have there with leadership training and life skills training. Even if you did, I'm not sure they want to hear it from you, because inevitably it's like, listen, when I go outside and I'm preaching to my kids, like about my wisdom, do my kids always inevitably sit there and say, oh, Dad, like, but when you say it to their friends are like, Mr. Roman, like, you've got a lot of, that's really great stuff. And then when your friend's dad says it to your kids, they're like, Dad, did you hear what he said? And I'm like, shut up. I've been saying that to you for years. How come you don't hear me? It's the same way in our companies. And so, Gabe, what we're really given the ability to do is we're saying, hey, listen, this isn't your company like preaching to you again. This is Eric Roman saying, listen, here's what leadership looks like. Here's what skills development looks like. Here's what life skills, like, let's talk about managing your debt and some of the other things that matter to you as a dentist. Let's talk about your future, like, and what that can look like inside here, any of the 3 different paths you could choose. Right. So, that's really what we've stepped into. And the catch is, Gabe, we have to do 2 things though, because we can't just deal with the associate. We also have to build the architecture for the company so that they don't need us forever. Right. They might want to have us there forever, but if we aren't building the architecture for the company to be healthier and sustainable, we're not building company value.
Right. Train the trainer, put the systems in place so it's repeatable. Wow. And I know I say that easier said than done. I know that's having done that process, yes, a very in-depth process. So I have enjoyed this because as we started off, maybe the most important conversation in dentistry today, when we look at turnover, we look at, again, the open back door in practices, which is a major problem.
Yeah. Could
it be that, our doctor turnover or our inability to gain feedback is part of the reason that occurs? So I would just, I have thoroughly enjoyed having this conversation with you tonight. And there are so many great points that are tangible that you can literally hear, take back to your team and say, hey, let's look at this in our business, and what do we have in place? And then how can people get in touch with you to work with you guys? What is the best way? Obviously, I think most people know how to get a hold of you through the number of social channels and website and every other channel that you're on. But what is the best way for people to reach out?
Right. I am Dr. Eric, ERIC, J, my middle initial, Roman, or O-M-A-N. Dr. Eric J. Roman on every social platform, but in particular, go to my website, www.drericjroman.com. And, like in the process of building this, like one of the things that I've learned in startups is that as you're building a company, oftentimes like you take your time to establish the brand because you want to be sure of what the product market fit in the company looks like. So like we've gone through 3 different iterations of names of what this product is. And so that's why you're not going direct to that website. Just come to me. And me and my team will handle it from there. Really easy. You can find out more about what we do and how we serve the clinical leadership of the company and how we serve associate doctors and dentists. So yeah, it's my job.
Thank you. That's exactly why I asked. So gems, insights, tips, tricks. Again, you want to level up, put into practice what we talked about tonight. It will definitely, and get in touch with Dr. Eric Roman. Hey, thank you so much for spending the time with us tonight. I have thoroughly enjoyed having this conversation and so many insights that I look forward to sharing with all our listeners and beyond. So always great talking to you, and I look forward to the next time. Thank you.
Thanks for loving on me, Gabe. Good to be here with you.
All right. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Dental Efficiency Playbook with Dr. Eric Roman. Please like this episode and subscribe to the channel for more great episodes. Cheers and see you next time.